Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 34 of the 40k Badcast. My name is Dan Boyd, and I am joined by my wet, hot American co-podcaster, Scrambles McJamboree. Scrambles!
Yeah.
What's up, buddy? How you feeling?
I wish it wasn't such a tired joke for me to say 2 out of those things are true. I'm not a Russian spy.
We've got a definite formula going on with these intros, don't we?
Yeah, no kidding. Except you're definitely the bass and I'm definitely the acid. And together we just make a fucking volcano of a podcast that splatters itself all over your screen once every 2 weeks.
Well, we're here. We're here in your ears talking about dumb shit. Fortunately, Campbell came from his job of literal muckraking.
Yes.
For a short break to podcast with us today. Campbell, why don't you tell us all the fun stuff that you've been doing today?
Well, you know, if you're anywhere on the East Coast, you'll know that it's been about 135% humidity for the past week. And I was out there, the water was raising above the sidewalk, and I had to start raking garbage out of the gutter. So thank you very much, Massachusetts, for your wonderful public works program for keeping me from having to do that.
Wow, that sounds like a lot of fun. In the meantime, I live on the 4th floor, and water doesn't go that high, at least not yet.
I don't know. I've seen this movie. It's a documentary. I think Al Gore made it a few years ago called The Day After Tomorrow. You might be in trouble.
I love it. All right. Well, let's get into the actual show and talk about our specs, what's on our hobby radar. And I want to go first here, Campbell, because I got a little bit to say about a certain project I've been working on, the motherfucking Astraeus.
Tell the class, Dan.
Dude, okay. So putting this thing together, which we talked about last episode, sucked. Like, it's resin model. Resin models that big suck. I just want to walk back like, hey, listeners, hi, it's your friend Dan. I'm here, and I just want to say this was a mistake. I never should have bought this giant fucking resin albatross. The Midnight Albatross, people are calling it now. It was a giant mistake. It's like a $300 model. I hate it, and I want to die. I really, really do want to die. Resin is a terrible medium for any model, especially one that weighs 7 fucking pounds.
Woo! I can't wait till Nova when you have to have like a team of retainers to carry that thing down the escalator like it's the fucking Ark of the Covenant just so you can get that to your game.
Oh my God, dude. And okay, so I was painting it on, what day is today? This is Thursday, the 26th?
26th,
So I was painting it on Tuesday, the 24th. I was doing the edge highlighting, the first layer of edge highlighting, which I got like 25% of done in like 3 hours of painting. So that tells you how much fun my life is right now. At the very last, I was starting to get tired because it was like 2 o'clock in the fucking morning. And I take it to like move it to paint an angle or whatever. And it smacks against the lip on my drafting table that I use for painting, and one of the repulsor banks breaks off.
Oh no.
And I was just like, fuck. So yesterday, Wednesday, I got off work and I was like, all right, I'm gonna fucking paint, I'm gonna get this shit going. And I got home and I remembered, oh, my Astraeus is broken. Cool. So I had to pin it back together, which took me literal hours of trying to finagle this thing into work with pins, but I got it. It's pretty sturdy right now. And dude, this thing is such a pain in the ass to fucking paint because great thing about just models on bases, like regular infantry size models, is you can throw them in the fucking painting handle. You don't have to actually hold or touch the model when you're painting it, so you don't smudge any of this shit with your nasty, grubby, disgusting hands. Well, with this fucking 7-pound monstrosity, you gotta hold it with your stupid fucking hands. And let me tell you something, man. When I'm holding it and manipulating it, and I can't just fucking hold it because it's 7 fucking pounds, like I have to lay it on something, and it moves, and it scratches, and it rubs the paint off, and I'm fucking going crazy, and I hate it.
Oh. Fuck, man. I'm so sorry. I'm feeling like this like phantom pain all over my being just at every mention of some other problem with this fucking model. And also, like, it took you 3 hours to do 25% of the highlights, and it's a 3-stage highlight, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah,
that's super cool.
So do the math, fuckos. It's your boy over here, your friend, your homeboy, your fucking girl next door, Dan Boyd. It just sucks. My life is terrible. This is garbage. This is bullshit. And I'm starting to freak out because it's fucking July 26th, and we have like 31 days or 32 days until fucking Nova starts. And I don't even have all that goddamn much time because I'm taking a painting class before Nova starts. Like, what? I have like life to do. It's bad. It's real bad. Well,
why don't you just breathe for a second and tell us about this lovely painting class you're taking?
So Roman Lepat, the famous amongst model painters painter, is doing a class like at Nova, but before Nova starts. Okay. And for my birthday, Danielle bought me a seat at that class so I can learn about some painting. I'm actually very excited for that. What I'm not excited for is the fucking crunch time painting extravaganza that I'm going to have to undergo to get this Astraeus done. And then after that, I have 2 more units of guys to do, which probably won't be too bad because it's an Astraeus. I can't even do it.
You can't say words that aren't Astraeus anymore.
It's just a unit of aggressors and a unit of inceptors, which are 3 guys each. So
I didn't know white whales came in black.
Oh boy, it's it's good. Things are good, Things are good. Oh, and I moved last week.
Yeah, you did, which totally didn't cut into your painting time at all.
Oh, not even a little bit. No, that was. So it was one of these things where we just got a better apartment in my complex, which we were moving basically across a garage, not even to a different floor. Stayed on the 4th floor. So we didn't we hired some guys to move the real heavy stuff, and they were there for 2 hours, but then we had to do everything else, and it took forever. Mm-hmm. Oh, and I also, because everybody was on vacation at my job, I had to come in for 3 or 4 hours during the middle of moving day and produce a fucking radio show.
Fucking hell.
So things are great.
I'm usually pretty happy that I'm not you, but right now I'm really happy that I'm not you.
Oh boy, yeah, it's good. So my hobby progress notes. Let me just read these out to you real quick. Astraeus, Lord help me. Edge highlighting is terrible. Resin sucks, and this is torture.
Edging is torture.
So Campbell, give me breathe some happy fucking air in my direction and tell me the good shit that you're working on.
Dude, all right, so I feel like my week or 2 weeks, whatever period it is, has been almost the polar opposite of yours, despite also working on the Lord of War myself. So I finished my Knight Gallant. Those transfers came in and put them on, varnished it. I fucked up a few of the transfers, but fortunately I had enough spare ones. Came together, looks dope, super happy with how that model came out. And I got to get to painting on the actual big-ass fucking Valiant, which is probably about 80% done right now. My biggest problem is every time I smudge the yellow a little bit because a wash goes over it or a highlight is bad or the adjacent color next to it is because, let me tell you, this thing's got freehand and stripes and shit like that. That means about 12 or 13 coats of yellow over that little smudge every single time. So that's kind of a nightmare, but this thing is going to be cool. It's going to be colorful. It's going to look kind of sinister because it is Lady Cassandra Lacar. She is the big cheese as far as my army's concerned. So I wanted to make her look a little bit more grim and imposing, kind of to get that across. But she's 80% done. On top of that, I also built my first 10 House Lacar Fusiliers. I think I sent you a picture of that. I think I'm still going to wait to actually share that with the community at large until I've actually got some paint on these guys, but they're on my desk right now, and I'm very happy with how they're looking. Aside from that, I did make it to it was a weird wedding style party where there was belly dancing and fertility spells being cast and all sorts of interesting stuff that was not quite the Samurai flavor, but still very, very fun to go to. But immediately after that, I went to the hobby shop in Quincy, Alpha Omega Hobby, with my fiance, and we're walking around, and she's like, "Ooh, what's this?" I'm like, "That's a Calidus Assassin." She's like, "Can I paint it?" I'm like, "Yeah, you can." So I could pick that up for her.
Yeah, you can, kid.
yeah, you can, Ken. Let me give you a fucking brush and you can put on 2 thin coats. And then she's like, oh, wait, what's this? And it's Lady Olinda, one of the new Night Haunt models. And I'm like,
yeah.
And I'm like, that's dope as hell. I want that in my house. She's like, yeah, let's bring this home and work on this. So she's actually got a little bit of a start to some of the Night Haunt stuff for Age of Sigmar. And she painted the Calidus and it came out pretty cool. And I was happy to give advice, then get sneered at for giving advice.
It's a double-edged sword, that advice giving. That's why I never do it. Hey, you got to be careful with those fucking fertility spells, homeboy.
Yeah?
You got to make sure you're like out of the area of effect of those things.
Oh, yeah, no, it's definitely it's a breath spell. I got out of the way of the template.
Okay.
But anyway, aside from this double-edged Xenophase blade or whatever the fuck the analogy we're making here, I picked up like the Night Stratagem cards.
Way to not force it.
Yeah, I know, right? Just smooth like sandpaper. Picked up a random Kislev model because I think that might have its home in my Fusiliers, and just sourced the remainder of my Lakar guard bits because our buddy Peter came to town and he brought a bunch of like auto guns and AdMech bits and so on that I got to use for my dudes. And on top of that, he and I got to play a game.
I wish Peter would come to my town.
You just got to have a cooler town than Malden, Massachusetts. And now that everyone has a good idea of what 3 mile square radius I live in,
we're going to figure out what your address is someday, buddy, and we're coming for you.
And that's why I'm opening a P.O. box soon, because not in the mood to get doxxed this week.
All right, so are we talking about games played?
Yeah, there is the smooth segue now that you drew attention to it.
Well, let me back it up 1 second.
All right.
And I just want to remind listeners that what you're working on, the Dominus Knight, the Valiant, though not technically the better of the 2 knights, the much cooler of the 2 knights.
Rule of cool applies.
And I'm working on my stupid resin son. And it's funny. It's just one more thing that makes me laugh / cry is that your model, when it's completed on the table, it'll be pretty good.
Yeah.
Well, mine is a giant 7-pound hunk of shit that costs 740 points. This thing needs like a 200-point drop to be effective at all.
To be as cheap as my knight?
To be as well. I mean, I'm over here fucking comparing it to a Baneblade.
Yeah.
Which
is the equivalent, I guess. I
mean, the Baneblade is way better, and the Baneblade's not good, and it's 200 points cheaper. Okay, I'm sorry. I gotta finish this fucking thing, Campbell. I just have to finish it. I have to like do the whole stay up until 3 a.m. for like next week straight and just get it fucking done, and then I can stop thinking about it.
I can't wait till it gets blown up on turn 1.
So here's a question for you, though. I actually thought about this today in the shower when I get all of my thinking for the day done. If I take it after I finish the first layer of highlighting and I get out there with a dull coat and varnish it, is that a good idea?
I don't know how that hurt.
Well, this is just to protect the paint.
Yeah. No, pretend I didn't just mumble over around words right there. No, that would actually be a pretty good idea. I know people who they'll paint something and then they'll varnish it between layers, which is useful if you're doing like oil-based shit. Yeah. I don't know a ton about that, but I know that's something that some people do.
I'm thinking I'm going to have to do it because like, just painting this fucking thing, like I'm rubbing off paint like all over the goddamn thing, like every single time I paint it. I've like set up a series of dish towels on my painting desk now to help cushion it.
Oh my god!
Oh, it's a clusterfuck. Anyways, let's talk about games played.
The bits are too heavy on like my night bits where they're all mounted on like little bits of scaffolding I put together with plastic and bases and thumbtacks and shit.
Yeah. All right. So games played. I only had one. Played against friend of the show, Gary. He's a newer player. Well, he has been in the hobby for a long time, but this is only his like second or third game of 8th against his Chaos Space Marines, who are really really cool conversions. A lot of really good paint jobs in there. And I fucking stomped him with my Raven Guard, and I felt kind of bad, but he's still learning. You know, he's got a lot to learn about how 8th works. And you can't rely on 1 wound models with plasma guns without transports to survive at all in 40k these days.
He's still learning how to run, so I thought I'd break his legs first so his bones would grow back stronger.
Well, Campbell, in that vein, why don't you tell us about how House Lakar has been performing lately?
Well, Well, let me start with the game against Peter and Dylan, just because that was the quick one. Well, opposite of quick one, actually. It was an 8-hour game that took 3 turns. Yeah, so Peter came down. He brought his squats count as Grey Knights, and I brought my Retro Ultras, and Dylan set up his Orcs, and we did like kind of a middle hammer scenario sort of game where, you know, half my guys and half Peter's guys started in the middle of the table. Dylan's guys would keep coming in on the edges and surround us, and then our reinforcements would come in on like turn 3. And we just kind of hung out and bullshitted and drank beer and made pizza, and it was more of an excuse to hang out and show off our pretty models than to actually play. But from my brief experience playing Ultramarines in 8th, Ultramarine tactics are way better than Black Templars. I was running away and shooting every single turn with like all of my infantry units.
Yeah.
And I had like the Ultramarine chapter tactic or warlord thing, whatever the fuck, that let me like recycle command points. So I was never short on command points instead of being able to like heroic intervention from 6 inches instead of 3. And you can't see it, but I'm doing like really like demeaning arm movements as I say heroic intervention from 6 inches instead of 3. It's bad radio, but it's bad chapter tactics, so it's fitting. So that did end with a victory for Peter and I, and you know, again, it went 3 turns. You know, it had the narrative Ford smash his kill tank to death with a thunderhammer. It was fun. It was silly. It was a pretty good time. The things that weren't a good time, for depending who you ask, were my next 4 games. My battle, I brought House Lakar, my pure House Lakar Knight list to 4 games. And I don't usually tell you what my list is because that's usually boring, but there's like 4 models here. So it's 1 Warglaive, 2 Helverins, and because I had the points, 1 Crusader. Usually I was hoping to take the Gallant because I just finished her and I want to get punching, but I'd be like 100 points down, which in hindsight might have evened the tables a little bit for everybody else. Now, mind you, in my little show notes here, it just says in all caps, 4 games in 2 days. Sorry for the war crimes. Because all of these games were bad. Good, bad, whatever. My first game was against Cody and his Dark Eldar. And this was in preparation for like a 1,000 point sort of tournament day at Dylan's. That was the next day, actually. And he actually brought a harder list than he was going to bring to that day. And it was, you know, a bunch of gunboats, Dark Eldar, typical Dark Eldar thing you'd have in 1,000 points. More boats than is reasonable, more lances, more dark light weapons than you'd expect to be reasonable. And I just fucking floored him. It just wiped everything off the table. I'm just like, it's turn 3 and you have 2 models left on the table. I have 2 models left on the table, but one is an unwounded knight, and the other one isn't also unwounded, but smaller knight. And yeah, he was just like sitting there, like his head in his hands, like, I don't know what to do. I have no idea what I could do differently here. He even knew what army I was taking. And he was like, I didn't tailor my list per se, but I tried. And I'm like, I'm sorry, man. Thanks for coming over. Also looking forward to you driving me to Dylan's in 8 hours. This isn't going to be weird, is it? So that was a pretty clear victory for them. And so word of this spread pretty quickly in our little game group. And the next day it's, you know, a little get together. It's a casual birthday ham slam for Dylan. He's years old and was happy to throw on this little game day for us. So
wait, is he older than me?
Yes. I mean, a gentleman never asks and a lady never tells. Anywho, the sheet has like the rules on it were like, have fun, drink my beer, don't get salty when Campbell's Knights roll you. and I don't know if it was intentional, but somehow over the course of these 3 games, I table or nearly table my opponent in every single one of them, and I still go 1-1-1. In true Badcast fashion, I win my first game by tabling my opponent down to 1 Marine and then having a random objective at the end that loses me the game. It was against Kyle, who is one of like the chillest, swellest guys I know. And he has Death Guard, and it's got, you know, a Blight Drone and Plague Crawler and some Terminators and some Marines and all that stuff. And it's a pretty cool list, and his stuff's painted beautifully. And I'm proud of myself because over the course of this game, I'm like very good with target priority. It's like I'm never rolling more than a 4 to wound anything with anything except for like heavy stubbers. Because it's like, okay, you know, always never wasting the autocannon shots on the toughness 8 tank, never wasting, you know, the meltdown by shooting something that isn't, you know, high toughness. And I play a pretty good game, but his Death Shroud Terminators just carve up my Helverins. So I found out there is a weakness to this army. It's things with scythes. And especially when those things are in cover, because the Helverins, although their guns are an absurd strength 7, 43 shots, damage 3, which it should be 2. I don't know why it's 3. They only have an AP of 1. So Terminators in cover, especially Terminators in cover, are very hard to dislodge. So he takes them out pretty handily, but the rest of my army just bulldozes him. Like my Crusader stomps over every unit in a row, guns down his commander, guns down this guy, that guy, and it's rough. But, you know, at the end of the game, we both have one model on one objective each. And for each objective you hold at the end of the game, you roll a die. And he rolls on his, and he gets 6 victory points. And I roll on mine, and I get -1 victory points. And I had like just used my last command point that round to try to kill his last guy to table him. And yeah, so it turns out with these scenarios, tabling does not get you max points, which is something I strongly support. Because I have a chart which tracks my games played that I put in like what I learned, what was good, what was bad. In all of them, it says what was good, I tabled my opponent. What was bad, I tabled my opponent. So game 2 was against Ron's Orcs, and this had he took like a speed freaks list with a lot of really wild converted bikes where he's got like sidecars with grot gunners in them and stuff like that. It's a fun army. And you know, he has this like super scorch, like big track with a super scorcher that's converted out of a Sherman tank. It's a fun army, and he seizes on me, and he rolls up and he puts in all his fire, and he takes like 6 wounds off one knight. And at the end of turn 1, he has 3 models left on the table.
Oh no!
Which are like his war boss on bike, his big mech on bike, and a truck that, to be fair, has some boys in it. Now here's the thing: to win this scenario, there was a VIP, a little like tech priest guy in the middle of the table, and the attacker had to protect him. The defender had to take him or could kill him to basically force a draw. And although my knight's base is fucking massive, he was still able to get around there, assault the VIP, kill the VIP, and force a draw. Which, yeah, and immediately afterwards, I just fucking wipe him off the table. But so that's a game of how I didn't lose a model, and I still only got a draw.
Good for you.
Yeah, I'm feeling really good about, you know, kicking puppies right now. That was turn 2 tabling, which I don't feel good about. And then game 3 had me fighting against Necrons, and it was basically the same situation. But because there was a central objective you had to hold, I just locked that down with my Crusader and was able to actually get a victory out of that one. And that was against Jimmy. He's another swell guy. He's, you know, I've played him in Age of Sigmar. I've played him in 40k. And yeah, so again, sorry for the war crimes. Sorry in advance, Nova. This is what you get for not giving my Black Templars a painting trophy last year.
This is good. You know, it's good because this time at Nova, I won't have to carry the entire fucking team by myself.
This is true.
Just want to remind everybody that last year I went 6-1 at Nova.
Hey, my first year I did that.
You're back. You're back, and you're with it now.
It just took a grossly overpowered codex to do it.
Yes, I'm actually very excited for I'm excited for Nova for a lot of reasons, but I'm excited to get raffle stomped by your guys on Thursday afternoon.
Oh, yeah.
And then, which I'm going to try to work the Astraeus into the 2,000 point list, which is will probably make the game go quicker, which is good.
I want to harpoon that thing so fucking bad.
You'll get you'll get a chance to. And then we're planning on doing the 1,500 point doubles together, which. At this point, if you just bring all knights, I'll bring all Raven Guard infantry, and we'll have the 2 of the most unkillable parts of the game on one side of the table, and hopefully we don't play 90 fucking termagants.
Oh, I mean, if I play 90 termagants, I'm going to be pretty happy.
Actually, no, I wouldn't even mind about that because I'm going to bring aggressors, and 90 termagants versus 3 aggressors doesn't look good for the termagants.
Yeah, I actually kind of hope I do get to fight another pure Knights player because I would like to have a proper Valiant joust.
Now that would be something to watch. Listeners, we'll let you know via Twitter if that's actually going to happen during that's another reason to follow us on Twitter is during Adepticon last year. I did a whole ongoing, I think like 20 plus part. This is what's happening at Adepticon little story. And I think we're probably both going to do it at Nova too. So follow us on Twitter.
I documented my war crimes recently, so you can see what it looks like when my knights step on things much smaller than them. At
DB Sleazy and at Brother SRM. Well, so let's talk about new stuff before we get into the rest of the show. Now, Games Workshop for 40k itself really hasn't come out with anything new in the month of July, but for Kill Team, they keep coming out with new stuff. And I don't want to talk about Kill Team too much yet, which is weird because that's all that everybody's talking about in every like corner of the hobby right now. But I want to give it a week or two after it comes out. Like maybe next episode we talk a little bit more about Kill Team and give us a chance to play it and get like into it and read the rule book, you know, and before I'm very excited for it.
Yeah, but if you want to hear two idiots talk about something they don't actually know much about, then, I mean, we do have a sizable backlog for you to listen to, but we don't need to subject you to that today.
No, I'm very excited. I forgot to mention it last episode, but who's on the cover of the Kill Team rulebook? Oh, that's right. Raven Guard Primaris Marines.
Who's not in the box? Raven Guard Primaris Marines.
Right, AdMech and Gene Stealers, which I think is actually a pretty good matchup between the...
I think so, too. I did get to check out the terrain when I was at the Warhammer store the other day, and that is some lovely terrain.
I haven't made any pre-order purchases yet, but I got to tell you, man, I am strongly considering buying the whole box just for the terrain.
I mean, well, you actually have space to actually hold games, allegedly, now. So
I do. I measured in my office, and I can put a 6x4 in there without having to move anything out.
So if I were to game in that office and you were to put a 6x4 in there, would I have to go under the table to get a beer like at my old apartment?
No, you wouldn't.
Whoa.
You could, yeah, there's enough space.
That's wild, man.
I know it is. Or I could do it out in my cavernous fucking living room. My new apartment is great, listeners. It's really cool. I have a giant fucking living room, a nice office, and a huge, like there must have been problems with these building plans, huge balcony. Like I could fit 3 hammocks right next to one another on this balcony. It's kind of stupid. I'm excited about it though. It's nice. Though if it wasn't, 400 degrees and underwater on the east coast of the United States of America, then maybe I'd spend more time on said balcony. But let's move on. So last episode, we forgot this segment. Our newest segment, We Make the Call. We completely forgot it, and I don't even know how, but we did. So we're bringing it back.
Old habits die hard, new habits die on the vine.
It took a break for a week, but it's back. Now we have 2 You Make the Calls this episode. Not from Quora or not from Yahoo Answers, but from actual honest to God listeners. One from a fellow named Gundam John, which I'm sort of upset about, and the other from our friend Pat. And so let's get into Gundam John's question first, Campbell, and then we'll serious chat about Pat for a moment. But Gundam John asks, what's the worst model you've ever painted? The answer is the Astraeus.
Ooh. All right. Now here's the thing. All right. I know Gundam John, Christian name, and I've got to wonder what, worst sculpt or worst job I've done painting.
That's a good point. Well, actually, no. I think the way I want to answer it is, what model was the most of a slog for you to paint?
I think it might be the Vespid I painted for Gundam John. I love you, buddy, but those sculpts are they're not my favorite sculpts in the world. I'm sorry. I'll paint your Armager. I will. I'll figure out what you want for it.
I'd actually do this Astraeus. I'm having trouble with it, but I actually do, and this might be, I don't know, this might change by next episode, but I think drop pods are actually worse than the Astraeus.
To paint, build, or all of the above?
All of the above. Drop pods are the rare combination of a GW miniature that is extremely complicated, really fucking boring, and just no fun to paint.
That's what you sports fans call a hat trick.
or the trifecta, as that one guy calls it.
Dan, don't contribute to the good. We're not contributing to the discourse right now.
No discourse zone here on the 40k Badcast. Okay, so Pat Mulvaney asked us a question, and I want you to read it to us.
Okay. You guys got me back into the hobby, and I want to have a nod to y'all in the army that I finally fucking got to a playing level after abandoning it in 2010. One of the gimmicks of the Army fluff is that they use Pidgin Russian to communicate internally. As a recognition, I want to include a nod to the pod, nice, by labeling one Razorback Badbois and one Razorback Fuccbois. The issue is that my hometown actually has a smallish Russian population, and I may have to explain to some dude/child why Russian profanity is on a tank. Please advise, preferably on the podcast. Also, is the lieutenant a fuckboy and the tech marine a bad boy, or vice versa? I have so many questions. In case you're curious, Polokoi Perin, bad boys, Mudazvium seems closest to fuckboy, which means basically a bullshitter. Also, I apologize to anyone and everyone who speaks Russian for how badly I dropped those into Google Translate and tried to remember how they were pronounced.
All right. So he's asking if he should put profanity in Russian on his tanks to give a nod to the pod, as he said. Now, I don't think bad boy is profane. At least it's not in English. But let's just assume that both are profane in Russian.
Let's give them equal measure, unlike the power dynamic in this podcast.
I think I would probably refrain from putting dirty words on miniatures. Mm-hmm. Just because a lot of the times when I am playing a game, especially if it is at a games workshop, like a kid will be around, and like most American kids, and I think Pat is an American guy. Most American kids don't speak Russian.
This is true.
But I wouldn't want to have to think on my feet, to try to explain what it means if some kid's like, hey, what's that say?
That's very fair. That's very fair.
But if you can figure out a way, like if I were putting bad boys on a tank or on an orc truck or something, that's fine. That's totally cool. I wouldn't, as much as I love the 40k Badcast, I wouldn't put fuckboy on a tank.
I mean, you just need to clean it up and make it say sex children. And you're now on a government watch list. I'm sorry.
I don't know. I think if Pat, if you can figure out a way to make it less profane, I'd say fucking go for it. But
yeah, I admire your enthusiasm and your care. And if someone asks why there's these words in your tank, explain to them that's from a podcast, and congratulations, you've lost a friend, but you've also become our new brand ambassador.
We are taking applications for social media manager. If you listeners out there want to run the hypothetical 40k Badcast Twitter and or Facebook, maybe we should actually do that.
I mean, I tried to turn my Camhammer Facebook page into the Badcast Facebook page. They won't let me rename it, but everything else is 40k Badcast on it now. So it's getting new message and subscribers. So something is working right.
So fuck it, whatever.
As for the final question, is the lieutenant a fuckboy and the tech marine a bad boy, or vice versa?
I think the tech marine in this case is a fuckboy, just because I do all the technical shit on this show and I'm a fuckboy.
Yeah, and I just yell a lot, so... there you go. There you have it. The roles have been defined.
There it is.
I also appreciate you not making is the chapter master a bad boy? While, the 10th scout of the 10th squad of the 10th company is a fuckboy, or vice versa, because, that might be a little insulting. So I'm glad you put them pretty much in the same bracket.
Yeah, well, our Tech Marines HQ are
they're elites,
elites,
but they're same toughness, wounds, and all that stuff as a lieutenant.
You know what I want?
What?
I want a Primaris Tech Marine.
I thought you were going to say Primaris fuckboy.
Primaris fuckboys.
I'm pretty sure you can find those on Grindr.
Pat's Marines look really, really good too.
They do. I don't want to undersell this. His Marines are like a beautiful teal and tan color scheme. And as for the fluff of them speaking like a pidgin Russian language, the Imperium's fucking huge, enormous. Variations in language will exist everywhere. And the idea of these guys using kind of like their own lingo to communicate internally, what? I say that works. I say that's totally kosher in the 40k fluff purview.
Okay, well, let's move on. We've got one big and meaty segment for the middle of the show this time around. It's and we're coming back to the old well. We're resurrecting an old segment that we like to do called Fluff Divers, and we're going to do a 3-part series on the Wars of Armageddon. As we all know, there are 3 Wars of Armageddon, and we're not just going to touch on those. We're going to touch on before and after the 3 Wars of Armageddon. But this episode, we're talking the first war for Armageddon, and what happened before Armageddon was Armageddon. So Armageddon is, for me at least, one of my favorite storylines in all of 40k lore. Like, I have 5,000 points of Armageddon Steel Legion. Campbell, you have 4,000 points of Black Templars, who were big in the second war for Armageddon.
That they were.
And probably the third war for Armageddon, too. And actually, I know that they're big in the third war for Armageddon, not on Armageddon, but Yarick and the Black Templars went off to go chase down Goskul, like, on their own, right?
Yeah, they did.
Well, not on their own, but they went off on a crusade. So, like, Armageddon for me has been sort of central to the hobby for a long time. And I love the history behind it. I love the lore behind it. I bought from Dylan that book about the second war of Armageddon, which was incredibly cool.
Book. Yeah.
And I remember the old campaign for Armageddon, the worldwide campaign that they did in the late 90s. I think it was the late 90s.
Late 90s, early 2000s. It was in third edition, yeah.
Yeah, so Armageddon has always been a central point for at least me. And so we wanted to do a multi-part series where we get to really dive down into the fluff and the lore around the planet of Armageddon and its 3 eponymous wars. So in this episode, we're going to talk about the first war for Armageddon and what Armageddon was before it became Armageddon, because there's a lot of history there too. So we divided this up between the two of us. Campbell's going to take pre-war. I'm going to take during and post-war. So Campbell, why don't you start and tell us what Armageddon was before it was Armageddon?
So before Armageddon, it was the world of Ulanor Prime, which was the center of an orc empire ruled by the overlord Urlak Uruk, which is...
Everyone come to Ulanor. Take a vacation with the orcs on Ulanor. I'm sorry. Continue.
That's fine. That's fine. Would you like a mork tie?
Ooh.
It's a green Mai Tai.
Mork tie. I know there is a better Orc Tale reference out there.
I thought Orc Tale was that movie starring Will Smith where he's underwater. Oh, that's Shark Tale. Shit.
What?
You never...
What the fuck are you... No. How did you mess that up? Okay, you know what? Fuck it. All right. Well, here's what'll happen. You'll keep talking about Ulanor, and I'll think of some really good orc-themed cocktail puns, and probably not come up with any by the time you're done. So please, continue.
Okay. Just don't think too hard. So this was once the world of Ulanor Prime, which was ruled by the overlord Urlak Uruk, which just feels like a name from an orc name generator. Or they were just really they were afraid of vowels that weren't U's. There's an unprecedented amount of U's in Urlak Uruk. But this place, there were once human worlds that had kind of drifted from the Terran empires. You know, this is like the year 30,000. And they had since been enslaved by the overlord. And these dozen or so worlds were all under his control and under his slave labor, and it was the largest concentration of orcs in one place for another 2,000 years or so. Now, during the Great Crusade, this target was known as the Ulanor Crusade. I wonder where they got the name. And the idea was, this crusade was 100,000 Space Marines, 8 million Imperial Army soldiers, 600 warships, and it's led by Horus and the Emperor himself. So this is the big one. And Horus's whole plan... this is before he's a total dickweed. This is when he's just, kind of a nice guy, is to cut off the head of the snake. I know, real original, but, he's going to go all please no steppy and just go straight for the head of the snake while the rest of the body crumbles under its own weight.
I get that reference.
Yeah. So this plan entailed having the Ultramarines, White Scars, and most of the Imperial Army doing a number of distraction attacks around the system to lead the main forces away from Ulanor Prime, where Horus was going to lead the entire Luna Wolves Legion. This is one of the few times in all of history Legion is gathered in one place, along with 2 million Imperial Army and 100 Titans, which is weirdly specific compared to all the rest, to take the planet. And
it's a lot of Titans.
It is a lot of Titans. It's about as many as I'm going to have Knights in about 3 weeks.
It's 25 maniples.
That is 25 man piles, yeah. So this main attack was going to be a drop pod assault all around the Tower of Ulanor, which is this like Tower of Babel-esque massive fortress, which was the Overlord's fortress himself. That's where he and his whole command was.
The Adeptus Mechanicus really hated painting the Legion's drop pods?
Yeah, I think they'll use airbrushes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. That was a really bad joke interruption.
That's okay.
Listeners, forgive me.
No.
No, we won't.
I think I speak
Tower
for
of
all.
Ulanor. Tower of Babel. Let's do it.
Yeah, it's a big fucking fort. It's just big. It's really big. It's huge, enormous. And while the drop pod assault happens all around the perimeter to draw the guys out, Horus and the Juster and the entire First Company all teleport inside. And
fuck yeah.
I don't know how many Terminators it is, but it's a fuckload, I imagine, because the First Company of a Legion.
The old shake and bake. You go this way, I go that way.
Man, dude, you were killing it this segment. Fuck, you've been taking improv classes?
Oh, man.
Let's do a yes hand. So they all teleport in, and Horus is like, Overlord's over there. I'm going to fuck him up. And he has just 2 lightning claws, and he starts Wolverining his way through his entire bodyguard, which is orcs, knobs, ogrins, and just increasingly massive orcs. Like, these are huge orcs, even compared to the orcs you can think of. Like, I'm thinking kind of like Iron Jaws from Age of Sigmar, like that size. And the rest of his Terminators are like, we can't shoot. He's in there. I guess we got to charge too. And I assume they did it with more gusto and a little less trepidation and sounding a little less like a whiny 14-year-old me. But they all ran in there and, big old melee. And Horus chases the Overlord through the fortress and, fights him in this whole thing, beats him to the ground, picks him up, still bloody and screaming, and throws him off the tower, and he just goes splat on the ground, which kills him and kind of signifies the end of this battle. And after being such a cool guy and abandoning his entire war host, he goes back into the room and sees every Terminator, every Orc, every Ogren is dead except for Abaddon. And
oh shit.
Yeah. So this, I feel like, again, it's been a long time since I read Horus Rising, but I feel like this is kind of where you kind of go like, this guy's going to go places. I hope he ends up okay. But from there, the rest of it was just a cleanup operation. It was just feuding orc warbands that never really had that centralized force of power. And the Ultramarines, the White Scars, and the rest of the Luna Wolves were just able to clean them up. And from here, an Imperial triumph was declared. The Adeptus Mechanicus bulldoze the fucking planet. They bury all the orcs. They pave it over. They ship in mountains from other planets. They build a giant monument on Terra and ship it over in parts and build it there like the Statue of Liberty, although I assume much bigger. And I assume this might be me half remembering from when I read this book in high school, but I seem to recall they pave over the planet and carve a giant Aquila in it, and you can see the Aquila from space. And
I remember them talking about that in Horus Rising.
Yeah, and I just kind of pictured it like, it's like when Chairface Chippendale shot his face into the moon with a laser. Like, it kind of feels like the same thing, but bigger. And this was...
Didn't Cobra Commander try to do that too?
I thought he wanted to steal the moon. These are all on brand.
There's a line from the show, the G.I. Joe cartoon, where Destro was mad at Cobra Commander because he's like, we spent all this time on cosmic graffiti.
Yeah, that's not the kind of thing you forget. Oh, God. I wish I had somewhere to fit in the part where Megatron takes Abraham Lincoln off the Lincoln Memorial and sits in the chair, but I don't have anywhere to work that reference in right now. So anyway, Imperial Triumph is declared. 14 full legions gather, just basically go to big ol' party, big ol' celebration, big ol' PR move, where the Emperor goes, hey y'all, this was super cool. I'm going to go back home and work on something I'm not going to tell any of you about. Listen to Horus now. And this is kind of where you get the building animosity and enmity between all the legions. It's kind of, despite this being about orcs, ostensibly, this planet and this battle, it kind of is the seeds of heresy. The seeds of heresy are sown as the subtitle for Horus Rising, isn't it? Cool, I just plagiarized.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I feel like at this point, it's like you're out with your friends and your dad's like he's like pitching batting practice for you and your friends or something, but then he gets tired and wants to go home and take a nap, and then you and your friends are all like, all right, so now who's gonna pitch? And nobody wants to, and then a big fight breaks out. I feel like that's what the Emperor did with the Primarchs after Ulanor.
Yeah, except one kid picked up a magic bat and it made him evil and turned him into a snake man.
And the bat controls him.
So that's the end of this kind of first chapter of what Ulanor is and Ulanor Prime is. And then the Imperium thought the orcs were forever defeated after this, which, lol.
Yeah, whoops.
Nice one there. So from here on is a period that's kind of just known as the Beast, which is a series of 10 books I didn't read.
Isn't it like 12 books?
No, it's 10. It was planned as a 10-book sequence, cycle, whatever you want to call it, called The Beast Arises. And 1,500 years later, so around M32, this is post-heresy. You know what happened in the Horus Heresy. We've talked about it before. You're a fucking Warhammer fan, you know.
It's still future history.
It's still future history. The Beast comes to prominence. And he is this massive, charismatic orc warlord, not unlike Boss Ogugaba, who's hoping to focus a new orc empire around Ulanor with a great plan to weaponize the planet and smash it into Terra as revenge. So the plan was the orcs were going to use this orc teleporter technology.
That's a proper orky plan right there.
Right? They want to teleport worlds through subspace and smash them into things, which as far as orc tactics go is very high concept. It's also like peak orc. I kind of love it.
Yeah.
So from here on, you have more or less like the Primarchs and the guys who are left after the heresy, which is like Vulcan and a bunch of Imperial Fist successor chapters, the Inquisition, the Admech Guard, and the newly formed Death Watch. So it's important to remember that the book with this came out alongside the Death Watch Codex release in 7th edition.
Ooh.
Yeah, no, this was planned. But
product placement.
Yeah. So they do this, coordinated attack to go back to Ulanor and fight over the planets and take them back for the Imperium and for humanity. And when they fight there, they realize there's not one, but actually 6 beasts, as each of them is going like, I spotted the beast. No, I spotted the beast. And each beast is actually a prime orc who is leading a, quote, legion of orcs in mockery of the Space Marines, wearing like salvage 2,000-year-old battle plate of the Space Marines who died fighting over the Ulanor system during the conquest of Ulanor.
So they're fighting orcs dressed up as Space Marines.
They're fighting cosplayers, yes.
Oh, no.
This is like what happens when the Ren Fair and the Sci-Fi Convention are next door.
Oh.
And they meet.
Well, the Ren Fair have real weapons, don't they?
I mean, they're foam.
Shit, I've seen real weapons at the Maryland Renaissance Fair.
Oh, that's true. I haven't been to a Ren Fair in a while. Well, either way, the orcs start throwing magic missiles, and the Space Marines have guns, so the Space Marines win. The reconquest is successful, and extremely cool named guy, Chapter Master Maximus Thane of the 5th Exemplar, orders the planet Exterminatus. Maximus Thane is a good fucking Warhammer name.
Yeah, it is.
Like, if I got caught in that fertility spell, that would be the name of my child.
Ooh.
Irrespective of gender. That'll be the name of my next cat.
Call back. You reverse that name, Thane Maximus, it's still really good.
Ooh, Thane Maximus, yeah, that's nice and neutral.
What about Thaximus Maine?
Thaximus Maine is a great name for a Maine Coon cat.
Ooh, it is.
Yeah, I know what my third cat's gonna be.
Thaximus Maine. Okay.
So,
please.
As you could tell by how far
Maximus Thane.
Maximus Thane. Over 10 books, not that much actually happens here. But Maximus Thane orders the planet Exterminatus. He's like, you know what? These orcs, no more of the shit. We don't want them around. We're going to execute them once and for all. We'll destroy them forever. Well, the Adeptus Mechanicus are like, there's a lot of really cool technology on this planet. Let's use it and move the planet and tell Maximus Thane that we threw it into a sun. And he believes them. So they reverse engineer the teleporter technology, teleport to Imperial space that's already been earmarked for conquest. And they're like, yeah, this is a planet. We just found it. It's called Armageddon. We should totally settle it. And also let us, excavate and find shit on there. And it's called Armageddon. It's really nice this time of year.
I feel like that's like Maximus Thane is out. And he's like, all right, guys, we got to get rid of this planet. We got to kill it.
Mm-hmm.
So do that. And then Adeptus Mechanicus were like, we'll see about that. Maximus Thane comes back in a couple hours later. He's like, hey, you guys get rid of that planet yet? And they're like, yeah, totally, man.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, we threw it into a sun. Really? Did you really throw it into a sun? Yeah, we did. It's there in the sun.
Well,
part of that fusion process.
Seeing as how I have no means of verifying your story, I'm going to believe you.
Huh.
Good job, boys.
All right.
I'm going to go back to space and become chapter master of the Imperial Fist now.
And how did you throw? You know what? Forget it. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it, man.
I'll just fuck right back off to wherever the fuck I'm from.
And that is how we arrive at Armageddon as we sort of know it.
So I'll pick up after that. Armageddon after that was built up through the Adeptus Mechanicus and the Adeptus Ministorum into a giant fucking hive planet with billions upon billions of citizens toiling for their short and unhappy lives to build a lot of things for the Imperium at large. It had the output of like a small forge world, but it wasn't a forge world. It was had a planetary governor and ruled by the regular Imperium. So Armageddon is a huge planet, and most of its inhabitants lived in complete misery and squalor.
It's the Imperial
and what
dream.
happens? Yeah, and what happens when the most of your population, their lives are terrible? They fall to chaos because their lives are so fucking terrible. So 2 concurrent events happen on Armageddon and not on Armageddon in, I think, like 444 M40 or something like that. So a while back. 1, warp storms cause food shortages on Armageddon. So the rich people on Armageddon, they're not starving. They got money. They're going to get their own food. But the workers and the regular people of Armageddon are starving.
It's nothing like the real world. Nothing.
Yeah, right. So chaos cultists, specifically chaos cultists devoted to the blood god Khorne, use this as an opportunity to stage an enormous rebellion. So on Armageddon is mainly divided into 2 large continents that are cut off from each other by a big equatorial jungle. Now, I do not know if this equatorial jungle, if one of the continents is north of the other continent or it's east of the other continent, because it keeps fucking switching depending on what book you read or what map you're looking at. But there are 2 continents, and in between is a strait where the equator is, and there's a lot of fucking jungle. So just keep that in mind. One of them is called Armageddon Prime. The other one is called Armageddon Secundus. On Armageddon Secundus, these rebellions are put down pretty easily. Armageddon Secundus is a lot less dense in population than Armageddon Prime. Armageddon Prime, however, they eventually end up losing contact with all of the hive cities due to chaos insurrection. So this is a very big chaos cultist presence on Armageddon. So at the same time, a space Hulk named Devourer of Stars, that's a hard word, Devourer of Stars, shows up at Angron's Demon World. And if we remember, Angron is the Primarch of the World Eaters. Now, Angron is an interesting character. I kind of like Angron because his story is pretty tragic, and he's really the only Primarch with like a truly tragic story from start to finish. But Angron also sucks because he's the Primarch with the least amount of agency and just sort of does whatever anybody tells him to do and bitches about it, but doesn't really do anything else. He goes with Horus because everybody hates him because he's a dick. He's got these like butcher's nails, they're called, in his head that turn his aggression levels up to 11. And so he's just mean to everybody all the time. So he doesn't get along with anybody except Horus, who Horus, I don't even think likes him, just uses him.
He knows he's a tool in more ways than one.
There's like I think a scene in the Master of Mankind where Malkador and the Emperor are talking about him, about Angron, and the Emperor's just like, this fucking guy.
He refers to him by number.
Yeah. So Angron, he's got an interesting story on one side, but he also sucks as a character on the other side. So after the heresy, the World Eaters are like extremely fractured, if you can believe it. A chaos faction devoted to murdering everybody breaks up after the big fight. So he's been spending the 10,000 years, at least in part, trying to bring them back together. So this giant Space Hulk shows up by his demon world, and I don't remember what his demon world is called. nor do I really care. And he's like, oh, shit, cool. We can get on this thing and take a ride back to the Imperium and see what we can fuck up. He's like, all right, come on, everybody, get on the bus.
So,
come on,
right,
no yelling on the bus. Come on.
Here's the thing. Like, I'm trying to picture, like, at this point, he's no longer Angron, he's Angrath. He is like a big fucking like giant bloodthirster dude. So I assume everything he's saying is just like, just a lot of like pointing and growling. And everyone's like,
no, Angrath is somebody different. Angrath is someone different, I thought.
No, Angrath is what Angron becomes. I think it's Angrath the Unbound. Oh, Angrath the Flame Chained?
No, I thought Angrath was
That's
like
a magic card.
Different. Doesn't matter. We're going with Angron. Just whatever. Fucking add us on. Get at us on Twitter if we're wrong. Whatever. Angron. It says Angron because it keeps talking about. They're two different. Fuck you. All right. Angron sees it as a way to help unify the warring factions of the World Eaters, and he and his boys jump up on their starship and head for the stars. And so Angron can't really control where the Devourer of Stars goes. Because Space Hulks don't really work like that. They just sort of float. They go in the warp, they come out of the warp. They go in the warp. And all this cultist activity on Armageddon draws the Space Hulk in. So Angron's got his World Eaters, he's got millions of cultists, and he's got these 12 bloodthirsters called the Cruor Praetoria with him. And those are like his bloodthirster commanders. They're bad dudes. So
big thirsters.
The Munitorum says that the rebellions on Armageddon, that the current forces on Armageddon are sufficient to break the back of the Chaos Insurgents, and they don't need any help. They're like, all right, you guys got enough guys, you're good. So, just take care of that and tell us when you're done. So what happens is the Devourer of Stars just shows up at Armageddon. There's no like real fleet presence. There's no like help coming for the current insurrections that are happening. So it's like you're fighting a bunch of Chaos guys, and then a giant Space Hulk full of Khorne demons and World Eaters, traitor Chaos Marines, like shows up behind you, and so at this point, surprise. Armageddon looks pretty fucked. Yeah. So immediately, Chaos Corruption is revealed as nearly half of the PDF, the Ash Waste Militia, and the Steel Legion forces go over to Chaos. They're like, hey, those guys look like they're winning, so we're gonna go with them. And this causes, so Armageddon Prime, as we know, was the Chaos Cultists had, if not taken over the hives, had limited the hive's ability to communicate with the outside world in Armageddon Prime. And Armageddon Prime is lost. So Angron leads his forces onto Prime, and they just start slaughtering everybody. And this is when the Space Wolves come in. Woo! So I don't know if we've talked a lot about the Space Wolves on this show.
Outside of Factor fan fiction?
Yeah. I don't think we have, but my thing with Space Wolves is I don't really like them. I'm not a big Viking guy. You know how some people are like really into Vikings?
Yeah.
I don't really like Vikings at all.
No. While I still do wear my Monomarth torture on occasion, I have left my Space Wolf ways behind.
I don't like their colors, like the light blue. Like I don't know. I like Space Wolves have been like a big part of 40k for a long time, and I've ignored almost all of it because I just find it. And like when that one, I think it was 6th edition, maybe 7th edition Codex came out, where everything was like wolf and wolf this and wolf that.
That was 5th edition. Yeah, that's when I stopped playing them.
Yeah, I was just good. Like, okay, this is stupid. Canis Wolfborn.
Canis Wolfbutt on Battlecat.
The fuck out of here. Anyways, so the Space Wolves hear the call for help from Armageddon, and they're like, all right, we got this. So Angron, he's an idiot, dicks around for a while on Armageddon Prime, murdering people and like setting up shrines, and he's like moving his forces through the jungle, and he takes time to set up this massive shrine to Khorne. Like this huge like brass and iron shrine
not made
out in the
skulls?
middle of the fucking jungle, which like is still there on Armageddon. It's so deep in the jungle and that nobody's been able to like not find it, but nobody's been able to take care of it. It's too much of a hassle, I guess. But it's still there on Armageddon, which, maybe is part of the reason why Armageddon is currently going under the shit that it's going under. But he's dicking around for a while. And so this allows Logan Grimnar, the Great Wolf, the leader of the Space Wolves, to land and help coordinate the defense of Armageddon Secundus. So they have made their last stand at the border of the equatorial jungle across the rivers Styx and Charon, which some of you guys might remember from Greek mythology. And Logan Grimnar starts figuring out how to defend this stuff. So Angron and his dudes are like, oh, it's fight time. So they start crossing through the jungle and coming out and trying to invade Armageddon Secundus. And the defenders of Armageddon are heroic in their stand against the forces of Angron. The river Charon or Chiron or whatever, Chiron, I don't know. That is well defended, and the enemy are pushed back in that battle zone. But across the river Styx, Angron and the crew of Praetoria are leading the forces in the battle. And let me tell you guys something. A demon Primarch of Khorne and 12 bloodthirsters are gonna kill a lot of dudes. Very hard to beat. So Logan Grimnar, being the smart boy that he is, he played his Yu-Gi-Oh! Trap card at this moment. And he had called in for help. Knowing that he was going to be fighting a lot of demons in this, he called for help. And who are you going to call, Campbell, when there's demons involved?
Cornbusters.
Yes, the Cornbusters themselves, the Grey Knights, are called in. So the Grey Knights teleport directly to the battlefield where the Space Wolves are having a last stand against Angron and his crew of Praetoria. 109 Grey Knights teleport down. And they take on Angron and his Bloodthirsters in combat. And they end up banishing all 13 of them back to the warp. 109 Grey Knights come, and only 13 survive. They sacrifice an entire company to take out Angron and his commanders.
Well, that's because it was before the Matt Ward Codex.
Yes. Before they were OP in 5th edition. So Angron and his lieutenants are gone, banished. And at that point, the forces of chaos just sort of disintegrate. A lot of the demons just go back to the warp. And without leaders, the mortal parts of the Chaos Army either flee or are cut down by the defenders. And after that, the defenders of Armageddon went on a crazy huge purge, and they easily took back Armageddon Prime, and they just killed pretty much everybody there on Armageddon Prime. Because it fell to chaos, and so they killed it. So,
how were they rewarded for their heroic defense?
Well, we're gonna get to that. So let's think about what happened. Angron came. They got rid of the Devourer of Stars. They cleanse the planet from the chaos forces on it. They kill a ton of people who are out there on Armageddon Prime who weren't the defenders of Armageddon. In an effort to keep the chaos taint from spreading. So, after the battle, the Inquisition, led by a guy called Jesme Kisnaros.
That's a Star Wars name if ever I heard one.
Yeah, right. Who is a real dick, decides that all remaining civilians on Armageddon must be sterilized and quarantined in Adeptus Astartes work camps across the galaxy. You can imagine that that's not a popular decision. Well, they don't tell the civilians themselves. They just are like, hey, there's extra security members and vaccinations you have to take. And so they start rounding them up and processing them for sterilization and for work camps. They decide that the remaining PDF, Ash Waste, and Steel Legion forces be liquidated. And that's not turned into liquid. Well, I guess kind of.
It might be, actually.
But killed. This is standard procedure for the Inquisition when the Grey Knights or demonic entities are in battle. Anybody that witnesses them are killed because those secrets are too important to get out to the wider Imperium.
They're posthumously excommunicated.
Exactly. There can be no exterminatus exterminatus on Armageddon either, because the infrastructure is too valuable for the Imperium. So they can't kill the whole planet. So they have to go in and kill all of the people. Hundreds, at this point, hundreds of millions, because the planet has already lost a shit ton of people, but hundreds of millions must be killed to save the Imperium. The Space Wolves, now they're not like the Salamanders or the Raven Guard, where they care about people. The Space Wolves don't really care about people. However, the defenders of Armageddon were so valiant and so heroic in their defense that the Space Wolves came to admire them. And so the Space Wolves felt like, hey, this planet has resisted really, really hard against chaos. We don't think they should be killed. We think that they've proven that they're not going to fall to chaos because they fought so hard against it. And Logan Grimnar specifically planned his campaign to limit exposure to civilians from chaos.
But afterwards, Space Wolves weren't really a fan of what the Inquisition was doing. And they kind of had some words.
They had a lot of words. So the Inquisition says, sorry, Space Wolves, we're going to go ahead with our plan because we feel that killing these hundreds of millions of civilians, sterilizing and or killing hundreds of millions of civilians is the best way to protect the Imperium at large. Space Wolves said, no, it's not. They're fine. You shouldn't mess with them. So the Space Wolves can't stop the processing of these civilians and defenders on the planet, as they're hugely outnumbered by hundreds of thousands of inquisitorial stormtroopers, or Tempestus Scions, as you call them now. However, the Imperial fleet in Armageddon is smaller and less powerful than the Space Wolf fleet. So what the Space Wolves do is they load up these troop transports full of about 400,000 or 500,000 civilians and defenders each, 20 of them. And they start escorting them one by one out of the system to the safe jump point so they can transfer into the warp and flee. And so the first one is called the Trident of Ilmatha. And it was escorted to the jump, but a Grey Knight craft called the Carabella destroys it before it can get out of there. The Grey Knight craft shows up, takes it out, and the Space Wolf craft is like, what the fuck? And the Space Wolf are like, whoa! So there are 400,000 civilians and defenders on board, and they all die.
Yeesh.
So Logan Grimnar decides, you know what? They can't kill all of the transports, so he decides the remaining 19, he's going to send them off all at once with the Space Wolf ships in between the inquisitorial guns to try to get them out, because he knows that the Inquisitors aren't going to be able to stop all of them. So Inquisitor Cisneros, remember the guy who's in charge of the inquisitorial forces for the aftermath of the First War of Armageddon, he says that it's okay to fire on the Space Wolf ships to get at the defenders and the civilians. But just then, Space Wolf reinforcements arrive in system in another huge battle fleet. The Grimnar goes out. He's like, "You're not gonna fuck with us now, fella, because we'll kill all y'all motherfuckers." And Cisneros is like, "All right, fine," backs off. And so they had killed a couple of the transports, and had damaged a few Space Wolf ships, but they had to stop because the Space Wolves had overwhelming firepower at this point. So because of this, Cisneros gets real fucking mad and starts taking out anything that has contact with the survivors of Armageddon. And this guy doesn't give a fuck. Armageddon survivors stopped at your orbital space platform to resupply before they went on their way. Exterminatus of the planet. Literally anybody who's met any Armageddon survivor, killed. We're talking billions of people killed by Inquisitor Cisneros because of the fact that the Space Wolves let these Armageddon survivors get out of system. Billions of people. At this point, the Space Wolves are trying to defend these survivors still. They're not like outright attacking the Inquisition, but they're doing whatever they can to help the survivors get away from the Inquisition. But Cisneros is sowing dissent within the ranks of the Inquisition and the Grey Knights right now. The Grey Knights are mad because they don't want to be used like this. They don't feel like their job is to go around exterminating civilians because the Inquisition tells them to. A lot of the Inquisitors with Kiznaros are mad because they think that this is a vendetta thing with Kiznaros and not really helping the Imperium whatsoever. And Kiznaros is like really weird. He's super old, but he's taken a lot of Juvenat treatments, so he looks like he's in his early 20s. He's also an unaligned Inquisitor.
That's rare.
Which is really rare. He's not part of Malleus, Hereticus, or Xenos. He is unaligned. However, he is an Inquisitor Lord and commands a ton of resources for this campaign. So Grandmaster Joros, who's a Grey Knight, who's Kiznaros' like closest advisor, comes up with a plan to capture Logan Grimnar and make the wolves surrender to get him back. Kiznaros agrees. Like, he's like, this is a really good idea. But like Joros is basically like, we're going to go talk to him. And we're going to try to figure this out. And, you know, we're not going to do any shady shit. Kiznaros is like, great, you do that. And while you're doing that, I'm going to set up a bunch of shady shit. And so he sets up a double cross where Grimnar is supposed to meet with them like an unarmed parley. But Kiznaros sets up a big ambush. So when Grimnar shows up, Kiznaros like fucks up his fleet big time with a way bigger fleet. So they finally end up like they kill a bunch of Space Wolf ships, and Kiznaros is like, all right, man, now it's time to parley. And Grimnar's like, fine, if that means you'll stop shooting all my dudes, fine, whatever. So they meet on Kiznaros' ship. And Grimnar asks Joros, he's like, have you been killing civilians? Have you been giving orders to kill civilians? And Joros is like, yes. And Grimnar fucking beheads the guy.
Yeah, he does.
Cuts his head right the fuck off.
I was waiting for you to get to that part.
Kiznaros is like, what the fuck? Holy shit. And so Grimnar and his wolf guard that are with him, they kill all the Grey Knights on the ship so that their ships can teleport them away, because the Grey Knights are like psychically blocking them from teleporting. And so at this point, Kiznaros is like, he's had this huge space battle. He's lost a bunch of Grey Knights. He's like, fuck, this shit has to stop now. The Space Wolves get the fuck out of there. But Kiznaros is like, oh no, we're gonna fucking get him. But at this point, the Space Wolves stop giving a fuck, and they escalate everything to full-scale war against the Inquisitorial agents whenever they come in contact with them. Like, they go weapons-free, big time. So the Inquisition calls up a Space Marine chapter called the Red Hunters to help them take down the Space Wolves. The Red Hunters, I've described them in my notes as a bunch of fucking cops. like these guys are big-time Inquisition shitheads. Like, on their shoulder pads, it's a skull with an Inquisition eye on it.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, the Red Hunters. They're bad news. And so Kiznaros at this point, he understands that his containment plan has completely failed. The survivors from Armageddon are all across the galaxy, even though he has killed billions and billions of people. So he's like, fuck this, I'm going to Fenris. He says, you know what? You know what they can't do? They can't fucking teleport Fenris away. So he goes and he lays siege to Fenris in an effort to curb the autonomy of the Space Wolves. So he gets there, he blockades the lightly defended planet because, like, the Space Wolves are away from Fenris. They're doing their shit in the galaxy. And he goes down and he's like, I want to meet with the highest ranking Space Wolf. And you know who they send?
I think I remember, but you tell it.
Fucking Bjorn the Fell-Handed is the current highest ranking Space Wolf on planet. And so they, again, parley. Kiznaros gives Bjorn an offer. Come back to the fold and undergo a penitent campaign, and all is forgiven. And when he says come back to the fold, he means, like, you don't get to decide what you do anymore. Like, the Imperium will tell you what to do from now on. You guys have been running rogue for way too long. Bjorn says, I don't know about this, guys. He doesn't want to kowtow to bureaucracy, especially when said bureaucracy is pointing a lot of fucking guns at him. And so Bjorn is like, all right, Kiznaros, you're going to have to convince me, if I'm going to agree with you, to try to get this surrender going. And Bjorn apparently is like a really reasonable guy.
Yeah, for a 10,000-year-old dreadnought especially.
Yeah. So he's like, all right, man, you're going to have to convince me. And at this point, Grimnar shows up. Grimnar had sacrificed the lives of his rune priests to get to Fenris so quickly to try to break this siege. So a giant space battle happens. The Space Wolf fleet versus the Inquisitorial fleet. Logan Grimnar's flagship, the Scramaziax, it's a great word.
The scrambled eggs.
The scrambled eggs punches through the defenses of Kisnara's flagship, Coral's Hope, and he and his Wolf Guard teleport to the bridge. So Grimnar is at the bridge, and he's decided, I'm going to kill Kisnaras. I'm fucking doing it. So he gets up there, and there's like Grey Knights. There's other powerful Inquisitors. Grimnar gets past all of them. He goes to confront Kisnaras, and Kisnaras is a very powerful Psyker. Kisnaras doesn't even resist. Logar walks up, chops his head right the fuck off. Decapitates him. At this point, though, Logan's pretty mad. And so he and his wolves are running rampage all over Coral's Hope, and the space battle is still going crazy. And so fucking Bjorn the Fell-Handed teleports to the bridge of Coral's Hope to calm everybody down. Be like, all right, it's over. It's done. So the Wolves and the Inquisitors come to an agreement. The Wolves will stop tearing shit up if an Inquisitorial ship never, ever again shows up at Fenris. And the Grey Knights sit down with all of the Space Wolves and explain what they're all about, so there will never again be further confusion. Both sides suffered huge amounts of casualties. Four Imperial vessels crashed into the Fang during the fight.
And didn't even ship the paintwork.
Is the giant fortress monastery of the Space Wolves. No, Campbell, you're wrong. It fucked up the Fang.
Really?
Oh, yeah. It caused a ton of problems. And part of the reason why the Space Wolves are getting their asses kicked by Magnus and the Thousand Suns right now in current, quote-unquote, 40k, is because this battle fucked up Fenris so bad.
Way to tie it all together, G-dubs.
Yeah, right? So they agree, though. No Inquisitorial ships near Fenris, and Grey Knights tell them all their shit. But even though there's a truce, both sides know that it's not over. Kisnaras was not, want to just make this point, Kisnaras was not a rogue Inquisitor. He was a Inquisitor Lord, who conducted a protracted campaign against a first founding loyalist chapter and killed billions of people. So the Inquisition immediately is like, all right, how do we get these guys under control? And so their first idea is manipulating the wolves' gene seed. Because as we know, the wolves are like very, very anti-authority, very libertarian, I guess, when it comes to what they want.
The term is Lupertarian.
Oh, yes. Got to write that down so I know what to call the show.
Got it.
Lupertarian. Okay. So the wolves don't want to be messed around with at all by the rest of the Imperium. They want to do their own thing, and so the Inquisition, it doesn't like this at all. And the wolves, of course, immediately start planning. It's like, all right, so how's the Inquisition going to fuck with us? So it's a truce, but it kind of ends with both sides being like, all right, we'll get them later. And so this battle is nuts. The First War of Armageddon. It starts with a chaos invasion of a planet, and then it ends with an inquisitorial siege of a chapter planet for one of the first founding chapters. Great story.
Proof right there that just because it's legal does not mean it's moral.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a little bit of a current day allegory, maybe.
Yeah, maybe current day allegory written like 15, 20 years ago. Yeah. It is definitely from like that really, really gritty, grim, dark period of GW writing, which is, that's my jam. That's what I came into this with. But I find it very funny that the big Armageddon book you mentioned earlier that you got from Dylan, which tells the wars of Armageddon, doesn't say, I don't think it says word one about the First War because it's all denied.
It does a little. It does. Yeah, you have to read between the lines.
Yeah.
So they talk a lot about these units and stuff that keep finding old battlefields on Armageddon during the Second War, where there's like a ton of psychic residue and weird shit keeps happening where the orcs won't even go. And so, and of course, there's all the trouble in the equatorial jungle. There's a bunch of unexplained shit that happens in the jungle a lot. So there's they reference it by not referencing it in that book.
So,
which I think is really, really cool because the population of Armageddon, the ones that stayed, the ones that the wolves didn't evacuate, they all died.
Yeah, the planet's completely resettled.
Yeah.
So,
there was a bunch of Armageddon survivors who, fled out through the galaxy, but I got to imagine they never came back.
I wouldn't. So there is a lot of further reading for this sort of thing. Like this is, although we've talked about this for a fucking while, there's a lot about this planet in particular and just this first war and the one before it. So all the Ulanor lore is from either Horus Rising and the early Horus Heresy books or from the Beast Arises series of books, which I was talking a little bit of shit about it. I listened to the first 2 audiobooks and they did not grab me, but they might grab you. And as for the actual first war for Armageddon, I read this a while ago and I mentioned on the show. I think it was Crusade for Armageddon by Jonathan Green, not that Jonathan Green, a different Jonathan Green who writes like Sonic the Hedgehog video game manuals. And that one wasn't very good, but did include some interesting stuff about like Black Templars during the Second War, finding Chaos Marines from the First War on the planet. And there is an actually very good book called The Emperor's Gift by our boy Aaron Dembski-Bowden about the Grey Knights that covers the events of the First War for Armageddon, including the fight against Angron, that paints the Grey Knights as these real weirdos, and it gives a kind of gut-wrenching view of the aftermath and what happened to Armageddon's people. And honestly, like reading that book, I was like, I really like this Logan Grimnar guy. I really like these Grey Knights. Like it's a very cool book, and it's like a rare one-off novel that's not part of a greater series by ADB. I highly recommend picking it up.
Yeah, this whole story made me actually kind of like the Space Wolves.
Yeah, like it's stories like this. That's why I like the Space Wolves. I like the Space Wolves characters like Logan Grimnar and Bjorn the Fell-Handed more than actually like the wolf using his wolf fists on his wolf claws to fight the Thunder Wolves from the back of his wolf saddle. But I like those characters a lot.
All right, so before we move on, next show we're going to cover the Second War for Armageddon, which, as we all know, involves our friends, our good friends, Gazkul Mag Uruk Thraka and Commissar Sebastian Yara. Kick his ass, Seabass!
And I have 3 further notes. 1, I did some homework while Dan was talking and I was ignoring him. Angrath is not Angron. I'm sorry. Stop tweeting at me. Second of all, when I was looking up cocktail names to try to find a good one for Orc 1, unfortunately the best one I could come up with is a Morktini or maybe a Morcatten. But I didn't look that hard. Third of all, when I was looking up cocktail recipes, my favorite one I found was just called water. Ingredients, water. Rated 5 stars on this cocktail website.
Ooh, delicious. That sounds nice right about
now. I poured myself a triple. Actually, I'm drinking it right now. It's strong, but it's good.
Okay, you know what else is strong and good?
Ooh, my thighs. But also, Factor fan fiction.
Yeah, all right. So this is it. This is the finale for Fast Times at Terra High.
Yeah, by law, we're only allowed to have one ongoing segment at a time on the show. So to do the Armageddon one, we had to do this one. It's due diligence first. Whew. Chapter 5. Previously on Fast Times at Terra, again with an H. Hi, the Prospero burns. Terra, bro. Fleeing from Chad Valdor and his cronies, Magnus and Ahriman crashed their Buick Prospero into a gas station, which then exploded. Now they're on foot, hoping that they've managed to give Valdor the slip. Magnus and Ahriman had been walking so long that the gas station was just a lightful speck on the horizon behind them. There was nowhere else to go but away. They didn't have a car, so they couldn't use the roads. There were too many people trying to kill the anime club tonight. Damn Lorgar's cowardice. He should be here now. But he was a fat coward, and he wasn't. The older boy straightened as he heard the engine behind them, and then he turned. There he was, Chad Valdor, in the car he'd had before. The car that Chad had been doing donuts in while the Prospero burned in that lonely gas station on fire. He had sacrificed Russ without even a thought, but Russ had had it coming. At this moment, Magnus knew, again, that this Chad was everything that he and anime would stand against, even if Father did not approve, even against Terra High School itself. Ahriman, Magnus said, I want you to run down that hill, now. Brother? Ahriman, exhausted and tired, asked. He doesn't want you, Magnus said, smiling. He wants me. He wants the anime club. But Ahriman was cut off as Magnus shoved him away, and the younger boy stumbled, looked back, and then fled. Magnus turned back to the Chad car bearing down on him. Russ was there too, hanging out the side of the window and still alive, visibly drunk and burnt, howling at the moon like an idiot. Magnus fell to his knees, spreading his arms and smiling. "And he can have me! Come, Chad! Together let us end anime!" That was when the pink motorcycle pulled up alongside Chad Valdor and threw a lit bottle of Everclear through the back window of his car. It was impossible to tell who the rider was as the car swerved away and the flames broke out in the night. Chad hightailed it back towards the road, eventually getting the flaming bottle out of his back seat. He was a loser tonight, but he had not lost the war. The Golden Knights never lost. The pink motorcycle roared up to where Magnus stood and braked hard, but gracefully, and now he could see that it was a babe in a tight golden bodysuit with silver wings embroidered on the back, with her head obscured by a motorcycle helmet, emblazoned with a silver fleur-de-lis. "Who are you?" he asked, awestruck as she turned off the bike and kicked the kickstand. "I'm the same girl I've always been," said the woman beneath the helmet, dismounting the bike and strutting towards Magnus as she loosened the straps on her helmet. "Where have you been all my life?" asked Magnus, finally standing back up. Finally, the helmet came free and she tossed it away. "I've always been right here, Magnus-senpai," said Jessica Genomai. She then pulled the president of the anime club into her arms and kissed him, and nothing else mattered. And thus ends the story of Fast Times at Terra, no H, High.
I love it. I like how they kept it open. So if we need to return to Terra High, we can in the future.
As I start typing a message to Rob to write another 5 parts right now.
That was amazing, man. Like two things I love about that. One, it was great. Great, funny story. Really stupid, but in a good way. A lot of fun. Two, a whole bunch of people wrote for that.
Yeah.
Not just one guy. A whole bunch of guys did. And just the fact that a bunch of idiots wanted to spend their time writing absolute dreck to make us laugh on the internet is I love it. Awesome. I fucking love this shit. So that being said, I want to thank everybody for listening to the 34th episode of the 40k Badcast, and I want to talk to you guys about reaching out to us and supporting us if you want to. So the best way to do it is to give us an email at contact@40kbadcast.com. We read them. We read all of them. Campbell reads them before I do because I forget to read them. But they are all read, and we respond to most, if not all of them. Send us questions for We Make the Call. There's only so many good ones on Yahoo Answers and Quora. So if you have any questions that you need answered by yours truly and Scrambles the brain boy, then we got you. Send them in. Contact@40kbadcast.com. You can also support us on Patreon.
Yeah, I've been overwhelmed by the response to our Patreon. At time of recording, there's 40 of you who are supporting us there, and I didn't know we had that many listeners. So thank you all so much for contributing, and I hope more people come in to check it out too. We've got our first exclusive episode up there, which is the 420k Badcast, as well as a little bonus article I threw together where I detailed the design process of the 420k Badcast logo and t-shirt, which is really stupid and dumb and fun, and you might like it if you like stupid and dumb things, which if you listen to this show for like an hour and a half at this point, you probably love stupid and dumb things. But if you want to check that out, that's at patreon.com/40k Badcast. And your status as a 40k fuckboy can finally be recognized.
Is it
it's 40k friendo for $1 because I wasn't sure what Patreon's whole policy on the word fuckboy would be. But for $5 a month, you get exclusive access to the once a month episodes we do on top of everything else. If you want to hear our dulcet tones talk about whatever random bullshit we feel like putting together for y'all.
Yeah, and so next month in August, we will put out another as Patreon supporter only exclusive podcast where I don't know what we're going to talk about yet, but I'm sure it will be just as stupid as the 420k Badcast. And so hey, become a supporter. Check out our stuff and help us keep the lights on this dumb show.
We also sell t-shirts. Shop.spreadshirt.com/camtunes. You can get a Badcast bad shirt, Budcast bud shirt, whatever the fuck you want. We have a few up there.
Yeah, they're good. You can also get at us on social media, like we said at the top of the show. I am at DB Sleazy. He is at Brother SRM. You can always yell at us about I don't know, whatever the fuck you want. Specifically for me, if you want to talk about how the Yankees are trying to do their best to be the best team in baseball, yet they still have a large hill to climb in the shape of the Boston Red Sox. So it's looking like the American League East might be a lot of fun coming up this September. Campbell, what you got?
Go Sox.
Okay.
You can you can follow me on Tumblr, cam2d.tumblr.com. I post pictures of my model every so often. And
model.
You should follow me on Twitter if you want to see me posting like stupid fucking bar reviews from Yelp and talking about fidget spinnering myself into the sun. I've never been held a fidget spinner. I don't fully grasp how they work.
All right, it's time for us to become the Adios Amigos, but we got to do
I was thinking we were going to call ourselves this episode.
We got to do one more thing before it happens, and it's that you got to give us a delightful and happy quote that will propel me to have a good rest of my day.
Spare a thought for Armageddon. It is a rock in a raging storm and must be kept from sinking into the sea.
I'm going to spare a couple of thoughts, actually. Thanks for listening, guys. We are the 40k Badcast. We're bad at 40k. You can too. And we'll see you next cartoon.